Stoicism is often presented as strength, as endurance, as emotional control in difficult situations. But that description misses the point. Stoicism is not built on force. It's built on silence. Not the silence of retreat, not the silence of fear, but the silence of someone who no longer feels the need to respond to everything. Most people speak too quickly, not because they have something important to say, but because silence makes them uncomfortable. Words become a reflex, a way to protect the ego, a way to avoid uncertainty, a way to reassert identity in moments where it feels threatened. Stoicism begins where that reflex ends. When something happens, the mind immediately wants to comment on it, to label it, to judge it, to explain why it shouldn't have happened. This inner narration feels natural, necessary, even intelligent. But most of the time, it's noise pretending to be clarity. Stoicism doesn't silence the world. It silences the unnecessary response. It teaches you to pause where others react. That pause is silence, and silence is where power accumulates. In conversation, silence feels awkward. In conflict, it feels threatening. In emotional moments, it feels unnatural, because silence removes the performance. When you don't immediately respond, you stop playing the expected role. You stop confirming assumptions. You stop feeding the dynamic that others unconsciously depend on. This is why silence unsettles people. They rely on reactions to orient themselves, on emotional feedback to feel secure. When you deny that feedback, they're forced to confront themselves. Stoicism understands this, not as manipulation, but as awareness. A Stoic doesn't rush to defend themselves. They don't correct every misunderstanding. They don't clarify every assumption. They recognize that words often entangle more than they resolve. Silence keeps things clean. Internally, the same principle applies. Most mental suffering is self-generated, not by events, but by interpretation. The mind constantly speaks, replays conversations, predicts outcomes, rewrites the past. It does this automatically. Stoicism doesn't try to stop thoughts. It simply refuses to engage with all of them. And that refusal takes the form of silence. Not silence as emptiness, but silence as non-participation. You hear the thought, you notice it, and you don't answer it. This is difficult at first. The mind is used to dialogue, to argument, to resistance. When you stop responding, it panics. It repeats itself louder, more dramatically, more urgently. But Stoicism holds its position, and slowly the noise weakens. Because thoughts need reaction to survive. Without response, they lose momentum. This is one of the most misunderstood aspects of Stoicism. People assume Stoics suppress emotion, that they push feelings down, that they deny their inner experience. But that's not silence. That's resistance. Stoic silence is different. It allows emotions to exist without allowing them to dictate behavior. Anger arises. You don't speak from it. Fear appears. You don't explain it. Sadness settles in. You don't narrate it endlessly. You observe. This observation creates distance, and distance creates choice. Most people never experience this distance. They are fused with their reactions, identified with every emotion, dragged by every impulse. Stoicism breaks that fusion, not with force, but with quiet. Externally, this changes how the world responds to you. People notice when you don't overreact, when you don't chase validation, when you don't rush to justify yourself. Your silence signals stability, not indifference, not arrogance, but groundedness. Others begin to speak more carefully. They reveal more. They test less. Because silence doesn't give them leverage. In arguments, silence prevents escalation. Not because you lose, but because you refuse to play. Stoicism teaches that not every battle is worth entering, and silence is how you decline gracefully. There's a deeper layer to this. Stoic silence is also about accepting reality without commentary. Something happens. You feel discomfort. The untrained mind immediately adds a story. This shouldn't be happening. This is unfair. This means something about me. Stoicism cuts the story short. It allows the event to exist without adding meaning to it. This is one of the hardest disciplines because the mind craves meaning. Even painful meaning feels better than uncertainty. Silence removes that crutch. You sit with what is, without interpretation. This feels empty at first, cold, exposed, but over time, it becomes freeing. You realize how much suffering came not from reality, but from what you said to yourself about it. Stoicism doesn't promise comfort, it offers clarity, and clarity requires silence. There's also a social cost to this path. People expect reactions. They expect agreement. They expect emotional participation. When you stop providing it, you may be misunderstood, seen as distant, unresponsive, even cold. Stoicism accepts this because peace is rarely loud. The need to be understood by everyone is another attachment, another dependency. Stoic silence lets that go. You stop explaining your inner world to those who can't see it anyway. This doesn't make you closed. It makes you selective. Words become deliberate, precise, necessary, not habitual. And when you do speak, it carries weight. Because silence gives words contrast. Over time, something subtle shifts. You stop narrating your life. Stop labeling every moment. Stop anticipating reactions. Experience becomes direct. Less filtered, less distorted. You don't become passive. You become present. Stoicism isn't about withdrawal from life. It's about engagement without entanglement. Silence is the boundary. It protects your attention, your energy, your internal space. Most people live exposed, emotionally loud, mentally cluttered. Stoicism offers a different way, a quieter way, not because the world becomes silent, but because you do. And in that quiet, the mind stops fighting itself. Not completely, not permanently, but enough. Enough to see clearly, enough to choose wisely, enough to remain steady when others shake. Stoicism is not about saying nothing. It's about knowing when silence is the strongest response. And most of the time, it is. This is EGO.